Marjorie Callahan's quiet life is upended when a young, battered bobcat forces its way into her home. Dirty, nervous, and quick to hiss at any human movement, the wild cat seems untamable. Until it spots Daisy. While Marjorie's terrier mix initially dismisses the intruder, the bobcat is fascinated, breaking through its own instinctual caution to offer tentative gestures of friendship. As a fragile bond forms between the two animals, the boundaries between the wilderness and Marjorie's living room fade. But what draws this wild animal to a domestic dog, and why does it refuse to return to the wild? Before we start, hit the like button and make sure to subscribe if you haven't, and hit that notification bell so that you won't miss any new stories. Marjorie Callahan had lived in the same little house on the edge of the Pinyon Juniper foothills for so long that the place felt stitched into her bones. The porch rail carried grooves from decades of grocery bags. The kitchen linoleum had survived 2 grandchildren learning to dance. Even the yard wall, an old, sun-bleached line of cinder blocks, had been there long enough to feel permanent, like a boundary between her quiet life and the wide, untamed country beyond it. That boundary broke on a Tuesday evening, just as the sky turned the color of dishwater and the wind began to worry at the eaves. Marjorie was rinsing a teacup when something hit the back door hard enough to rattle the glass. She froze with her hands in the sink, listening for the second thud that usually followed a branch falling in the wind. Instead, there came a sound she had never heard inside her home before. Thin, rasping, and sharp, like a tiny saw cutting through panic. It wasn't a bark. It wasn't a cat's yowl. It was a warning, too old for its small throat, a growl that promised teeth if anyone came close. Marjorie turned slowly, her wet hands dripping onto the floor. In the dim hallway leading to the mudroom, a shape moved like a shadow with bones. 2 eyes caught the light from the kitchen and flashed back at her, round, bright, and wild with terror. The animal's ears were too big for its head, the tips painted black like little ink-dipped brushes. Its coat was dull with grime, and the fur along its spine stood up in spikes, as if someone had dragged their hand the wrong way. A bobcat kitten stood in her mudroom, pressed low to the floor, body tight as a coiled spring. Marjorie's breath went shallow. She had seen bobcats before, out beyond the wall, silent silhouettes slipping through scrub, quick as a thought. But this one was here, in her house, cornered between a boot rack and a laundry basket. It looked young, not much bigger than a plump barn cat, yet everything about it said it belonged to the wild. Its paws were wide, its whiskers long, and its gaze was a hard, desperate stare that did not blink. The kitten made that sound again, spitting, hissing, a stuttering snarl, while its whole body trembled with the effort of being brave. Behind Marjorie, her little dog Daisy came trotting in, nails clicking cheerfully on the kitchen tile like she had nothing but time and good intentions. Daisy was a compact, obedient thing, part terrier and part mystery, with soft ears and the trusting heart of an animal that had never had to earn a meal. She paused at the doorway and tilted her head, curious. The bobcat's ears pinned back. It lunged 1 step forward, then stopped short, as if the idea of moving any closer was too much. Marjorie lifted one hand, palm out, not like a command, but like a promise she wasn't going to chase. Her voice came out low and careful, the tone she used for frightened grandchildren and skittish birds. "Easy," she murmured, even though the kitten did not speak her language. "Easy now. I'm not coming at you." Daisy wagged once, hopeful. The kitten spat again and backed into the corner so tightly its whiskers brushed the wall. Its sides heaved. In the dim light, Marjorie could see that its ribs showed faintly under the dirty fur. Not the healthy line of a young wild animal built for speed, but the sharpness of hunger. Its muzzle was smudged with something dark. Mud, maybe, or dried blood. Marjorie's mind raced the way it did when the furnace quit one winter and she had to decide what could wait and what could not. She knew the rules well enough. Wild animals were not pets. Bobcats were not meant to be handled by untrained people. And yet there it was, in her mudroom, small enough to slip through a gap, desperate enough to break into a human house. She didn't move toward it. Instead, she moved away very slowly, so the kitten could see every step. She guided Daisy back with the gentlest touch to the dog's collar, then shut the kitchen gate between them and the hallway. Daisy whined softly, insulted by the sudden exclusion. Marjorie turned off the bright overhead light and left only a small lamp glowing in the corner of the kitchen. The softer light made the hallway less threatening, less like a trap. She slid a shallow bowl of water onto the floor near the mudroom entrance, keeping her hands visible the whole time, and then she retreated again, giving the kitten room to breathe. For several long minutes, nothing changed except the wind outside. The kitten stayed pressed to the corner, eyes unblinking, watching the water bowl like it might be a trick. Then, inch by inch, it crept forward. Its movements were fast but careful, like a creature that believed the floor itself might betray it. It sniffed the water, flinched at the sound of its own breath, then finally lowered its head and drank so quickly the water trembled. Marjorie let out the smallest sigh she'd ever allowed herself. Water first. That meant it had been without it. That meant it had been wandering. That meant something had gone wrong out there in the brush where a mother bobcat should have been teaching a kitten what to fear and where to hide. When the kitten finished drinking, it didn't relax. It simply looked around again, searching for the exit it had used to come in. It paced the mudroom, sniffing at the baseboards, the wall, the floor, frantic in a way that felt almost human, like someone who had run too far and suddenly couldn't remember the way home. Marjorie watched its nose trace along the bottom of the cinder block wall that separated her yard from the open land. She followed its gaze and finally saw what she had missed. Behind a stack of old flower pots near the mudroom, there was a small hole where the wall met the ground, hidden by weeds and shadows. The kitten slid its body toward it, testing the space, then darted halfway through, only to pull back at the sound of Daisy's soft whimper from the kitchen gate. It turned its head and stared at Daisy. Daisy stared back, ears perked, tail still. For a moment, the entire house went quiet except for the wind. Marjorie expected the kitten to hiss again, to threaten, to flee. Instead, the bobcat made a sound that wasn't quite a growl and wasn't quite a meow. Something small and uncertain, like a question formed in the only language it had. It stepped forward, then back, then forward again, drawn toward Daisy as if the little dog were a lighthouse in a storm. Daisy gave a single polite wag and sat down, the way she had been trained, as if presenting herself properly mattered. The kitten blinked once, slow. Its ears lifted a fraction. Then, as if courage suddenly outweighed fear, it approached the gate. It didn't touch it, didn't scratch it. It simply pressed its nose near the bars and breathed in Daisy's scent. Daisy leaned forward and sniffed back. Marjorie felt her throat tighten in a way she didn't like. She had lived long enough to recognize tenderness when it arrived unexpectedly, and she also knew how easily tenderness could become tragedy if someone mistook it for permission. That first night ended with the kitten choosing the mudroom floor, curled in a tight, watchful ball near the hidden hole in the wall. Marjorie left the back door closed, the lights dim, and a small towel folded in the corner so it had something warmer than bare tile if it wanted it. She slept in fits, listening for every scrape and hiss, afraid the kitten would hurt itself trying to get out, afraid Daisy would bark and startle it into a panic, afraid she would wake to silence and find it gone. Or worse, still there, sick and failing. In the gray light of dawn, she found the mudroom empty. The towel was untouched. The water bowl was licked dry. For a few minutes, she stood there with her hand on the doorframe, unsure whether relief or disappointment belonged in her chest. Then she noticed the dirt smudges leading to the hole, and she understood. The kitten had come in for safety, for water, for one night of walls between itself and the cold. Then it had left before daylight made it visible to hawks and coyotes. Marjorie told herself that was the best outcome. Wild meant wild. It had chosen its own way. By late afternoon, the wind picked up again. Marjorie made chicken soup and tried not to look at the mudroom too often. Daisy, however, looked at it constantly, pacing to the gate, sniffing the air, then returning to Marjorie with an impatient little huff as if to say, "The visitor is late." Just after sunset, the kitten returned. This time it didn't crash into the door. It slipped in through the hole like smoke and stopped just inside, ears forward, eyes scanning. It looked thinner in the fading light, and the dirt on its coat was worse. When it saw the water bowl, it went to it immediately and drank with the same frantic speed. Marjorie's heart thudded, practical and worried. Water alone wouldn't help. If it was this hungry, it would take risks. Risks got young animals killed. She moved slowly to the pantry and pulled out a box of dog biscuits. Little plain ones Daisy liked. She hated herself for even considering it, because she knew a bobcat kitten needed meat, not flour and salt. But she also knew an empty stomach didn't care about perfect nutrition, it cared about survival. She broke one biscuit in half and laid it on a saucer near the mudroom entrance, then retreated again, sitting in a chair where the kitten could see her without feeling surrounded. She kept her hands on her knees, palms down, so she looked less like a reaching predator and more like a harmless piece of furniture. The kitten approached the biscuit as if it might explode. It sniffed once, then twice, then glanced at Marjorie. Its eyes were fierce, but beneath the fierceness was something that made Marjorie's chest ache, an exhaustion too heavy for such a small body. It took the biscuit in its mouth and darted back to the corner, where it crunched it with sharp little teeth. The sound was so quick and desperate it barely lasted. Marjorie slid another piece closer. The kitten ate again, then again, and then, with a sudden loss of caution that looked like pure hunger, it came forward and ate the next piece right where it lay. Its shoulders loosened slightly. Its tail, short and banded, stopped twitching quite so hard. When it finished, it licked crumbs from the floor. Marjorie didn't move. She didn't smile. She didn't reach out. She simply watched, letting the animal control the distance, the timing, the entire conversation. That night, she made a call. She didn't call animal control like a person trying to get rid of a nuisance. She called the local wildlife rehabilitation center whose number she had taped inside a kitchen cabinet for years, right next to the poison control line and the number for her plumber. A woman answered with a voice that sounded both tired and kind. Her name was Leah Benton, and she introduced herself as a licensed wildlife rehabilitator and veterinary technician. Marjorie explained the situation carefully, making it clear she had not captured the animal, had not touched it, had not tried to make it stay. Leah didn't scold her. Leah asked the questions that mattered, about size, behavior, breathing, visible injuries, whether the kitten seemed coordinated or wobbly, whether it was eating, whether it had any discharge from eyes or nose. Marjorie described the dirt, the hunger, the defensive noises, the way it seemed fixated on Daisy as if the dog were a strange comfort. Leah was quiet for a moment, then said, "It's probably orphaned or separated. This time of year, mothers can get hit by cars, caught in illegal traps, chased off by dogs. A kitten that young should not be alone." Marjorie's throat tightened. "What do I do?" "Keep doing what you're doing," Leah said. "Do not try to pet it yet. Do not try to carry it. Keep the dog separated unless the kitten approaches willingly through a barrier. Offer water. For food, if you can, switch to something better than biscuits. Unseasoned cooked chicken, small pieces, or canned cat food in a pinch. No milk. And please, if it looks sick, if it's lethargic, if it can't keep food down, call me immediately. I can come out, but I'd rather we do that only if we must. The goal is always the same. Keep it wild enough to go back." Marjorie wrote every word down with the focus of a woman who had raised 3 children and understood how fragile young life could be. The next day, she boiled chicken and shredded it into tiny pieces. She set it on a saucer near the mudroom entrance and sat back. When the kitten arrived that evening, it smelled the air and went still, as if the scent itself had reached into its chest and pulled a memory out of hunger. It crept forward and ate the chicken so fast Marjorie worried it would choke. Daisy watched from behind the gate, silent now, her head tilted with something that looked like concern. Over the next several days, a routine formed. The kitten came at dusk and again near dawn, slipping through the hole like it had an appointment. It drank, it ate, it rested in the mudroom corner, always with one eye open. It never stayed long enough to make Marjorie forget what it was. Even when it seemed calmer, its muscles stayed ready. Its ears tracked every sound. Its eyes followed Marjorie's hands like they were separate animals that might suddenly strike. Yet slowly, almost invisibly, small things changed. The kitten stopped hissing every time Marjorie shifted in her chair. It began to groom itself, licking mud from its paws, smoothing its fur into something softer and cleaner. It started to glance toward Daisy, not with panic, but with interest. And then came the first goofy moment that made Marjorie laugh out loud despite everything. Daisy had left a squeaky toy near the gate, a battered rubber duck that had survived many enthusiastic attacks. The kitten noticed it, reached one paw under the gate bars, hooked the duck, and dragged it into the mudroom with a quick, triumphant yank. It froze as if expecting lightning. Nothing happened. The kitten tapped the duck once, cautious. The duck squeaked. The kitten jumped straight up in the air, startled by the sound it had created, and landed with its fur puffed and its eyes wide in offended disbelief. Marjorie covered her mouth with her hand to keep from startling it with laughter, but a sound escaped anyway. Soft and warm. The kind of laugh that had been rare in her house since her husband passed. The kitten stared at her. Then it stared at the duck. Then, very deliberately, it smacked the duck again, as if daring it to squeak a second time. When it did, the kitten pounced with both front paws and bit down like a tiny lion conquering prey. Daisy, watching from behind the gate, wagged her tail so hard her whole body swayed. She gave a single quiet woof, the gentlest greeting she had. The kitten dragged the duck toward the gate and pressed it there, then looked at Daisy as if offering proof of its victory. That was when Marjorie realized something important. The The kitten was not trying to be friendly in a human way. It was not looking for affection. It was looking for connection, for a safe reference point in a world that had become dangerous overnight. Daisy was calm, consistent, predictable. Daisy did not hiss. Daisy did not chase. Daisy simply existed with uncomplicated goodwill. To a frightened orphan, that might have felt like the closest thing to family. Leah came to visit on the 5th day. She arrived in a dusty SUV with a carrier in the back and a calm competence that filled the room without making noise. Marjorie led her to the mudroom and pointed to the hole, the bowls, the towel, the scattered signs of the kitten's comings and goings. Leah crouched and studied the space with the eyes of someone trained to see what other people missed. "It's using this as a safe den," she murmured. "That's good. It feels secure here." Marjorie kept her voice low. "It's eating now. It plays a little. It watches me. It's still wary, but not frantic like the first night." Leah nodded. "That's the hunger easing. That's stress coming down." Then she looked Marjorie straight in the face. "We have to be careful. The more comfortable it becomes with people, the harder it can be to release. We want it healthy, not tame." Marjorie swallowed. She had known Leah would say it, and still it landed like a stone. Leah set up a small trail camera aimed toward the hole, so she could see the kitten's schedule and condition without forcing a confrontation. She taught Marjorie how to place food without creating a situation where the kitten would associate hands with feeding. She also explained what Marjorie had suspected in her bones, that the kitten's mother was almost certainly gone or unable to return. A kitten this young didn't choose a human house for fun. It chose it because it had no better option. That night, the kitten arrived as usual and ate the chicken, then sat near the gate watching Daisy. Daisy lay down, chin on her paws, eyes soft. After a long time, the kitten made a small sound. Again, not quite a meow, not quite anything else, and pressed its head lightly against the bars of the gate. Daisy leaned forward and licked the bars once, right where the kitten's fur touched. A single careful lick, the way an older dog might check a pup for reassurance. The kitten flinched, then went still. It didn't run. It didn't hiss. It simply remained there, absorbing the contact like warmth. Marjorie felt tears sting her eyes, and she hated herself for it because she knew what tears could mean. Attachment, wishful thinking, the human desire to keep what is not ours. Over the following weeks, the kitten grew fast. Its coat brightened into a warm tawny color with clear spots. Its legs lengthened. Its movements became smooth and athletic, less like a frightened stray and more like the wild hunter it was meant to become. It also became bolder in ways that made Leah raise an eyebrow when she reviewed the trail camera footage. The kitten began lingering longer in the mudroom, especially on cold nights. It started playing not only with Daisy's toys, but with anything that rolled. An empty plastic bottle, a dropped apple, even a golf ball that had somehow ended up under Marjorie's porch from a neighbor's yard. It batted the ball with one paw, then chased it in a tight circle, then pounced and stared at it as if shocked it had dared to move. Marjorie, careful as she tried to be, began to recognize the kitten's moods. When it arrived hungry, it moved fast and ate quickly. When it arrived calmer, it explored, it played, it watched. One evening, when it had finished eating and the house was quiet, the kitten stepped closer than it ever had. Marjorie was sitting in her chair, hands folded, breathing slow. The kitten approached until it was within arm's length, then stopped and stared at her. Its eyes were no longer wild with panic. They were still cautious, still bright with alertness. But now there was something else there. An evaluation, a decision being made. Marjorie did not reach out. She didn't even lean forward. She let the kitten control the moment. The kitten lifted one paw and placed it gently on the edge of Marjorie's shoe. The touch was feather-light, like a test. Then it lowered its head and rubbed the side of its face against the shoe once. Quick and soft. A scent-marking gesture that was both instinct and trust. Marjorie's breath caught, and for one dangerous second she wanted to break every rule and gather that small wild body into her lap like a house cat. Instead, she stayed still. "That's enough," she whispered, not as rejection but as protection. For both of them. The kitten pulled back, as if satisfied with the exchange, and went to the gate to watch Daisy again. Leah adjusted the plan. As the kitten grew stronger, it needed less time in the mudroom and more time learning to be wild. Leah arranged for a large outdoor enclosure at the rehab center. Tall fencing, climbing structures, logs, hidden feeding spots, so the kitten would learn hunting behaviors and stop relying on predictable meals. The day came when Leah decided it was time to trap the kitten safely and move it. The word "trap" made Marjorie's stomach twist, but Leah explained everything with patient clarity. The trap would be humane, baited with food, monitored constantly. The goal was not to frighten the kitten for cruelty's sake, but to move it to a place where it could be prepared properly for release. That night, Marjorie sat by the window as Leah set the trap near the hole. Daisy stayed beside Marjorie, unusually quiet, as if she sensed a change in the air. The kitten arrived, smelled the food, and hesitated. For a moment, it looked toward the gate where Daisy watched. Then it stepped into the trap. The door shut with a quick metallic click that made the kitten explode into motion, throwing itself against the wire, snarling with fear. Marjorie's heart broke so sharply she pressed her fist to her mouth. She had wanted the kitten safe. She had not wanted it terrified. Leah moved quickly, covering the trap with a blanket to calm the animal. The kitten's frantic movements slowed. It became a tense, trembling shape in the darkness, breathing hard. Marjorie stood there, helpless, while Leah lifted the trap with steady arms and carried it to the SUV. Daisy whined, a small sound of confusion and loss. Marjorie followed to the porch, not stepping closer than Leah allowed. The kitten's eyes glinted through the blanket's edge for a second, and Marjorie felt as if she were looking at a storm contained in cloth. Leah spoke quietly. "You did the right thing. This is the part that hurts." Marjorie nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks without permission. She hated how empty the mudroom already felt. She hated how her own heart had betrayed her with attachment. The weeks that followed were harder than Marjorie expected. She visited the rehab center only once because Leah advised against frequent visits. The kitten, now bigger, leaner, unmistakably bobcat, needed to forget people, not remember them. Still, Leah sent updates. The bobcat was eating well. It was climbing. It was stalking live prey in controlled conditions. It was avoiding humans, showing appropriate fear. It had stopped seeking the fence line when people approached. It had started choosing hidden corners and high perches, watching from a distance like a proper wildcat. Marjorie listened to these reports with a strange mixture of pride and grief. It felt like watching a child grow up and move away, except the child had never been hers to begin with. One afternoon in late spring, Leah called with the news Marjorie had been both waiting for and dreading. "We're releasing it next week," Leah said. "It's ready." Marjorie sat down at her kitchen table, fingers trembling against the wood. Daisy rested her head on Marjorie's knee, warm and steady. Leah continued gently. "We'll release in suitable habitat, away from homes, where it has a chance to establish territory. It's strong. It's wild. It's exactly what we want." Marjorie swallowed hard. Can I be there?" Leah paused. "From a distance, yes. Quiet. No talking to it. No trying to call it. It needs to walk out like the world owes it nothing and no one is waiting." Marjorie nodded, even though Leah couldn't see her. "I understand." Release day arrived with bright skies and the kind of clean air that made everything feel sharp-edged and honest. Leah drove Marjorie out past the last paved road, beyond the ranch fences and the scattered mailboxes, into a stretch of public land where the scrub thickened and the rocks rose into low ridges. Marjorie rode in silence, hands folded in her lap. Daisy stayed home, because Daisy's scent and presence would only complicate the bobcat's last steps back into independence. Leaving Daisy behind felt like leaving part of the story behind. But Marjorie knew that was the point. The wild didn't keep souvenirs. At the release site, Leah and another rehabber carried the covered crate to a spot near boulders and brush. They set it down facing open land. They checked the area, listened, made sure no hikers were close and no dogs were running loose. Everything was done with respect and caution, as if they were guests asking permission to step into the animal's world. Marjorie stood back, far enough that she could not smell the crate, far enough that she could not become the center of anything. She felt the sun on her face and the wind tugging at her hair, and she thought of that first night. Mud on fur, hunger in the eyes, fear rattling in a tiny chest. Leah pulled the crate cover away. For a moment, nothing moved. Then the bobcat appeared at the crate's opening. Bigger now, powerful, with muscles rolling under sleek fur. Its ears were tall and alert, and its eyes scanned the landscape with cold, clear calculation. It did not look back at Leah. It did not look back at Marjorie. It looked forward. It stepped out with one paw, then another, testing the ground. The air changed around it, as if the land recognized one of its own. For a split second, the bobcat paused near a clump of brush, and Marjorie's heart stopped because she thought it might turn, might glance back, might give her something human like a farewell. Instead, it lowered its head, sniffed the dirt, and moved on. It slipped between rocks, then vanished into the brush so smoothly it was as if it had never existed at all. Marjorie's chest ached with the sharpness of it. How something could be so real, so present in her home, and then be gone like a shadow at noon. Leah touched Marjorie's elbow lightly. "That's a good release," Leah said, voice warm. "No hesitation, no looking back. That means we did it right." Marjorie wiped her eyes and managed a small, broken laugh. "It feels like being proud and heartbroken at the same time." Leah nodded. "That's the price of caring responsibly." Life returned to its quieter rhythm after that, but it was not the same quiet as before. The mudroom felt ordinary again, yet Marjorie sometimes caught herself glancing toward the hidden hole as if expecting the soft slip of paws at dusk. She never sealed the hole right away. Not because she hoped the bobcat would return for food, but because the wall had always been a promise that the wild was near, and she didn't want to close the only door the wild had used to ask for help. Weeks later, she did reinforce the wall properly, filling the gap with stone and mortar as Leah advised, because other animals could get trapped or injured, and because dependency was never the goal. When Marjorie finished, she stood back and watched the dry mortar set, feeling the finality of it like a period at the end of a long sentence. Summer came, then early fall. Daisy resumed her cheerful patrols of the yard, nose to the ground, tail wagging. Marjorie's old cat Mabel returned to sunning herself in the window like a queen who had seen enough drama for one lifetime. Then, one evening when the air smelled of rain and pine needles, Marjorie heard Daisy's low, alert bark. Not frantic, not aggressive, just the sound Daisy made when something unusual stood beyond the fence line. Marjorie stepped onto the porch, careful and slow. She looked out past the yard, past the wall, toward the scrub where the land dropped away into open space. At first, she saw nothing. Then she saw movement. Two shapes slipping between brush and rock, silent as smoke. A bobcat stood on a low ridge, watching the house from a distance that felt deliberate. It was bigger than the kitten had been, fully grown now, with the confident posture of a wild animal that belonged exactly where it stood. Near it, just behind the adult's shoulder, a smaller shape moved. Another young bobcat, half-grown, curious but cautious. Marjorie's breath caught. The adult bobcat turned its head slightly, not staring at Marjorie the way the kitten once had, but acknowledging the house as part of the landscape. Its eyes were bright and untroubled. It looked well-fed, strong, and utterly wild. The smaller bobcat sniffed the air and crouched, as if ready to bolt if anything felt wrong. The adult's tail flicked once, a quiet signal, and the young one stayed close. Marjorie did not move. She did not call out. She did not step forward. She stood on her porch with her hands at her sides, letting the moment remain what it was. A gift, not an invitation. Daisy padded to Marjorie's feet and sat down, ears forward, watching too. Her tail thumped once, soft against the porch boards. The adult bobcat held still for a heartbeat longer, then turned away. It moved down the ridge with that effortless grace that made Marjorie think of flowing water. The smaller bobcat followed, stepping exactly where the adult stepped, learning the invisible rules of the wild. Within seconds, both were gone, swallowed by brush and distance. Marjorie stood there long after, listening to the quiet return. The ache in her chest was still there, but it had changed shape. It no longer felt like loss. It felt like something completed properly. Like a story that began with fear and hunger had ended with strength, freedom, and the continuation of life beyond her porch. Inside, the house was warm. Daisy trotted back to her bed with a satisfied sigh. Mabel yawned in her window spot, unimpressed by all of it. Marjorie poured herself a cup of tea and sat at the kitchen table. The same table where she had written down Leah's instructions, where she had fought the urge to keep what she loved. She looked out at the yard wall, solid now, and beyond it at the darkening foothills. She thought about the smallest kinds of bravery. The kind that didn't look like heroics in a movie, but looked like sitting still so a frightened creature could drink water. The kind that looked like feeding without touching. The kind that looked like calling a professional instead of letting pride pretend it knew best. The kind that looked like letting go, even when your heart wanted to close its hands around something soft and precious. Some friendships, she realized, weren't meant to live inside a house. Some were meant to pass through like a wild wind, leaving the air changed behind them. And even if the bobcat never came back again, Even if Marjorie never saw those brush-tipped ears on the ridge one more time, she would still know what had been true for that brief season. An orphaned wildcat had found the courage to step into a human home, and a lonely woman had found the courage to help it leave.